Now that we have our 3D text modeled, we can go ahead and set it up for animation by adding some deformers to it. We have our modeled 3D text, and we still have the original curves that we used in part 1 to create them. This is the curve for the letter 3. The letter 3 still has the bevel operation on it under its creation history. Before I go ahead and set up the deformers, I will delete the construction history of this object. So I go up to Edit, Delete by Type, History. Now you can see all of the creation history has disappeared, and we are left with just a polygon object. I'll do the same for the letter D. Now I have two polygon objects ready to create deformers. They are independent of the curves that I had used to create them. I will select both letters and move them up so that they are sitting on the ground plane or on the grid. This will make it easier to set up the deformers. I'll also move the curves out of the way so I can focus on setting up the deformers. Now I want these letters to bend, to twist, and to squash and stretch. I can do all of these effects using deformers in Maya. I select the object, and under the modeling menus, I click on Deform, Nonlinear, and Bend. This creates the bend deformer, which also has a control object called the bend handle associated with it. This is the bend handle. If I select the polygon object, I will see the bend under the inputs. The bend deformer has a property called curvature, which decides how much the object will bend. If I click on the word curvature, and then using my middle mouse button, click and drag in the viewport, I will see the object bend. Now you can see the bend is in the left and right direction. What I want to set up is a forward and backward bend instead. Now if I go into wireframe mode by pressing 4, you can see which way the bend handle is showing us the bend. I want it to bend forward and backward instead. So I will select the bend handle and then rotate it so that this bent part is aligned with the forward-backward direction. I'll set my curvature value to positive because I want the positive bend numbers to be bending forward. Now I rotate my bend handle to create a forward bend. As you can see, just by rotating the bend handle, it changes the direction in which the letter bends. You also notice that the center of the letter stays where it is, but the top and bottom bend around it. That's not exactly what I want. I want the bottom of the letter to stay fixed as the top bends. You'll see that the bend handle bends around a fixed center. If I move the bend handle down, this will keep the bottom of my object fixed on the ground as the rest of it bends around that point. So now you can see as I line up the center of my bend handle with the bottom of the letter, and now as I scrub the curvature, you see that I get a forward and backward bend. But as you can see, the top half of the letter 3 is perfectly straight and it's not bending. because my bend handle is too short and doesn't extend all the way to the top. So my bend handle ends here. I want to extend my bend so that it covers the whole letter. To do this, I will select the bend handle, and under the inputs, each bend deformer has a low bound and a high bound. If I increase the high bound, the bend handle will grow taller at the top and cover the whole letter. So I click on the word high bound, I middle click and drag to increase it, and you can see that my bend handle extends upwards. My high bound is now at 2 and it covers the whole letter. Now as I scrub the curvature using the middle mouse button, I get the bend that I wanted. Now the part of the bend handle below the floor is defined by the low bound. I don't need anything below the floor, so I set my low bound to 0, and that trims my bend handle so it only extends from the base to the top of the letter. And that's the bend setup that I want. I'm going to reset the curvature to 0 and move on to some other deformers. I'll add a twist deformer and a squash deformer. So again, you select the object that you want to deform, go up to Deform, Nonlinear, Twist. This creates the twist handle. It has two circles, one at the bottom, one at the top, and the little line segments going to the right show you which way the bottom and top are pointed. A twist deformer has a start angle and an end angle. If I change the start angle, it twists the bottom of the letter, and if I twist the end angle, if I scrub the end angle, it twists the top. Now you can see that all the detail that we had added while beveling this object is giving us a very clean twist. Next, I will add a squash deformer. The squash deformer shows up with a circle around the middle, and it has a line down the middle with a crosshair at the top and the crosshair at the bottom. The squash deformer has an attribute called factor that we will animate to squash and stretch the object. So if I scrub the value of factor, here's what happens. It squashes and stretches around the center of the squash handle. I want the bottom of the letter to stay fixed and the rest of the letter to squash and stretch around the base. So I will move my squash handle down and line it up with the bottom of the object. Now as I scrub the factor, the bottom stays fixed, but once again you notice that the top half of the letter does not squash or stretch. That's because my handle ends and my high bound is too short. I need to increase the high bound of this deformer. I increase it to 2, and that takes the top of the squash handle up to the top of the letter. And I'll reduce the low bound to 0. Now, if I select the object and scrub the factor, I get the exact squash and stretch behavior that I wanted. Squash and stretch is great for bringing your letters and your objects to life in motion graphics, and the squash deformer helps you to maintain the volume of the object as it squashes and stretches. I will now go ahead and set up the same 3 deformers for the letter D. For the bend deformer, I move the handle down so the bottom of the letter will stay fixed. I scrub the curvature and then rotate the bend handle so that the bend is in the direction that I want. I'll round it off to 90 degrees and test my bend to make sure it's going in the right direction. Next, I add the twist. And by default, the twist deformer works well. I'll now add the squash, set my high bound to 2, low bound to 0, and move my squash handle down to the base. Now with this setup, if I scrub the factor, I will get the squash and stretch on the letter D that I wanted. I'm just going to adjust the position of my squash handle to get a cleaner squash. And there you have it. Now my letters are set up with the nonlinear deformers that I need to bring them to life.